A slight delay due to a technical issue. We are live, folks. Today, I will be talking about the Homestead Apprentice with John Willis of SOE Tactical Gear. How you doing, John?
I've got an echo here. Sorry, man. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. You got your echo clear up?
I'm closing windows, but I think this is mine. Okay. I think we're good.
All right. All right, cool. We're going to be talking about a program that John has put together at his place called Homestead Apprentice, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute with John. Before we do, real quick, I want to take care of my sponsors today. This is an episode of the podcast. If you happen to be catching this on John's channel, don't worry. We will be on to the main topic in just a bit. Anyway, guys, if you are like a lot of people that listen to the Survival Podcast, you're probably a dog owner. And being a dog owner can be a great blessing or it can be a curse. And it all depends on how well you've been trained to train your dog. If you ask any good dog trainer what is the hardest species they work with, they won't tell you like a Great Dane or a Golden Retriever. They'll say a human, right? Because training the human is the hard part. That's what you have to get right. Dogs are easy. They follow rules. Humans break rules. So what you need to do is get trained to train your dog. With Canine Academy, you can do just that. I worked with Joel Riles personally to put this program together. It's awesome. And I recommend everybody start out with the core obedience course, because no matter what you want your dog to do, it all starts with core obedience. You want a hunting dog, core obedience. You want a guardian dog, you want core obedience. You want a protection animal, you want core obedience. You want an animal that just doesn't eat your stuff on your homestead, you want core obedience. So check it out today at canineacademy.com. Next up, hey, you know, you really should make sure that you are diversifying your wealth preservation strategy. And one way to do that is with precious metals like silver and gold. Now, where do I get my silver and gold? JM Bullion. Why? Well, they sponsored my show for a decade. That's a pretty good reason to do that. But they give all of my members and me, of course, a discount on purchases. Plus, they have better pricing than Monix and APMEX. And I can get in touch with the president like that fast if there's ever a problem. So I don't know why you would get your silver and gold anywhere else. Check them out today at jmbullion.com. With that, let's get into this. John, thanks for hanging out while we took care of our sponsors there. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man.
So we've had you on the show roundabout ways before with our Tuesday coffee chat with Nicole, but you've never been here as a guest before.
That's correct.
So for people that maybe haven't caught one of those first Tuesday chats, can you tell people just a little bit, who is John Willis?
So I run a company called Special Operations Equipment. We build nylon tactical gear. That all started as SEAL team and SF guys. I've run that company for 35 years, and that has transitioned into lifestyle equipment and overland gear, as well as the military and nylon tactical gear. Left California, moved to Tennessee. Like I tell people, get out of California. We left 20 years ago, moved here to work with 3 people and have a very small shop, and never did intend to scale and grow it into what we did. Bought a piece of property that was very neglected, abandoned building, 10,000 square feet on 10 acres of property. Never intended to put the company in here, never intended to have a big events and stuff here. And that has turned into Self-Reliance Festival, which is a kind of a little offshoot we're doing to get better employees, and more importantly, move people with like-minded beliefs to the community as property comes for sale. A lot of times, especially in small towns, you're like, all these outsiders from California and New York moving here and changing politics. Well, as those properties become available, how do we put people with our beliefs on those properties? And this is a good workup to that.
Very, very cool, man. So what is your background as it relates to Homestead? We're here to talk about Homestead Apprentice, but like, was this something you always did, or is it something that kind of happened as you built this company in Tennessee?
So grandma, as a young child, grandma kept us when mom and dad were at work. And we lived in San Diego, right? Kearney Mesa, right by the big shopping malls, kind of. But back then, the neighbor had chickens in the backyard, and grandma had a greenhouse, and grandpa was a carpenter, built several shed workshops out there where he would take bicycles and lawnmowers and repair them and sell them at the flea markets and stuff. And they were always capturing water and always growing some of their own food. So as I got a little bit older, we lived kind of in a place called Tierra Santa, and the outskirts of Tierra Santa, we were on the edge of it. So it was just wildland canyons, which used to be old bombing ranges. So we were running around with BB guns as 10 and 12-year-olds. We were running around as BB guns. And I think we probably decimated the West Coast songbird population. We probably extincted some species back then, but we always had that wild in our blood, right? Because we always were out there by ourselves. We get on BMX bikes at 6 o'clock in the morning and ride till dark, and then have to come all the way back dark. And it seems like as a kid, it seems like in the old back 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we were tougher. And I think it's just that we were dumber, because we would go out with a mason jar with water, and that was the only water supply we had. And we never knew any different not to drink water out of puddles and ponds and stuff. And I don't recall ever getting sick, but I know if I did it now, I would be deathly sick from it. So kind of always had that. I had a lot of reptiles, so I was breeding rabbits. We were not supposed to have farm animals where we were by any means. And I had ducks and rabbits. And then we were using the manure from the rabbits for the garden at mom's house. And then when I moved here, all of a sudden, when we crossed state lines from California to Arizona, you just felt the freedom. We stopped at a gas station and bought $100 worth of fireworks and lit fireworks at the gas station. If you did that in California, you'd have been like, there'd have been a SWAT team, right?
Oh, yeah.
So moving here, we're like, what can we do? And my friend James Yeager is why we moved here. He's like, you can do anything you want. And literally, we do stuff on a weekly basis now that you would literally have police called on you in California. Like, we rent equipment. We don't have to do a land survey. We don't have to do a butterfly survey. We just do whatever we want. We live in a place with no controls, no regulations, no zoning, no codes. We light a fire that you'll see the flames of it 2 miles away from the bridge. And that fire burns for 10 days. And we just do anything we want to do. No harm, no foul, no victim, no crime is kind of how it is.
You know, that's crazy how different things are by crossing a state line in this country today.
Yes.
And I guess that is part of the original plan. Like, where I grew up in Pennsylvania, it was always that way. It's not so much anymore. I used to walk down the road with a rifle on my shoulder and have a neighbor like, hey, come over here, and you go, there's a groundhog in the garden. You shoot the groundhog for him. And today I'm pretty sure the police would be called. And where I live now is a lot like what you're saying with the fireworks. The first year we were on this property, we were outside on like the 3rd of July, the day before. People started with the fireworks early. And my wife goes, this is pretty cool. I'm like, the last time I heard this many explosions, people were shooting at me.
Yes.
Right? It is kind of amazing. And like, I always touch base with local law enforcement. So we're under the sheriff's department out here. And the answer I got with, what do we need to do? It was pretty much, as long as you're not cooking meth, we don't give a shit.
Yep.
And like we don't have time for any of the crap. And it's crazy because it's not just state lines. Like, what I do here in Dallas would same thing. I'd be in jail.
Yes.
So there's less and less places like this, but I like what you're doing and bringing people in to preserve it. We need to do as much of that as we can. And I guess that's part of your new program, Homestead Apprentice. Where exactly did the idea for this come from?
So the idea actually came from Evan from Radio Made Easy. He's here quite a bit. We do a lot of business together, and I have a 5,000 square foot building kit sitting out here to add on to the 10,000 foot building. And he said, when are we putting that up? And I said, well, it's 85,000 in concrete. I can do a lot of other stuff with 85 grand right now. And he said, we should get some apprentices to come out and put that up. I'm like, that sounds cool. You put that together and I'll be there. And that kind of transitioned into our friend Bob Lester, always business minded. And he's like, I see a TV show out of this. I'm like, perfect. You guys put that together and I will show up, but you got to do the footwork. So they really are kind of the driving power behind that. He's talking to sponsors and major companies about that. Evan is kind of running social media. Austin is producing, who's here now, Austin Davis in the comments there. He's one of my video guys and cuts all of my short form content. So there's a team of guys behind there putting that together and driving that. And we're going to do that. We're going to run the gauntlet, which is the selection, which will happen right after Self-Reliance Festival, May 5th and 6th, I believe.
So the 5th and 6th of April?
The 5th and 6th of May.
May, okay. All right. exactly how's this going to work? Like, what is the plan for the program?
Well, we're going to bring them out. We're going to bring out a lot of people, 50 guys, and then we're going to run a gauntlet, which will basically be a selection. And that's why when I sat down with Joel Salatin, I wanted to know how he selected his interns and kind of how they did that and what problems he saw and what the solutions were and the best way to do that. So that's really when I got to interview Salatin, I wanted to talk about things that nobody else had on video with him. And that's kind of the direction we went. So we're going to pull 50 dudes out, and we're going to kind of just run a selection and see whose skills are what. And more importantly, who can team build and work with a team and motivate. And, you know, just like in the military, you take the young dude and you put a couple people under him and all of a sudden a leader steps up. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And we're going to whittle that down to 2 12-man teams. And we're going to run 2 12-man teams head to head. So it'll be a little bit of Donald Trump's The Apprentice. You're fired. And then it'll be experts in the field. We're going to put them through a lot of different classes: medical class, chainsaw class, tourniquet class, fighting pistol, attack response. We have a lot of higher end people in their industries that are like, we know how to run a saw, but we've got dudes that really run saws full time. So we're going to make sure they get the best training. And then we're going to, you know, just kind of go from there. We're going to do some sawmilling. They're going to come onto the property and rough camp the first night, and then start building structures. And then once the structure's built, how are we going to do water catchment for the structure? What is the solar going to look like? And we have companies involved for all of that.
Okay. That's really cool. So when you start out with this gaggle that you're going to drill down to end up with 24, those 24 are, and you're kind of 2 teams headed up against each other. Is this going to be like an ongoing elimination, or are those teams, as long as they stick with what they're doing, and like they're for the duration?
We're going to keep them from the duration. Of course, we're going to, you know, critique and have the mentoring, and I'm sure that some will be eliminated along the way.
Yeah, maybe self-elimination.
I suspect more self-elimination.
Yeah,
I hate to get rid of a guy who will stick through it all the way, you know?
Yeah, because that's one of the things I never liked about those shows, especially like the weight loss and fitness ones and all. It's like the whole point is to see what you can do with people rather than just, it's not trying out for a high school football varsity team where you just cut people. I like cutting the initial herd down because you kind of have to. You can only have so many people doing this.
We're also pre-qualifying employees, right? We're pre-qualifying people for the communities, because it's not just here. If a guy's like, man, I really like this, but I definitely don't want to go to Camden, Tennessee. Well, you've got Nicole on the hauler is always looking for the right person. You've got Bob's guys over in Ohio always looking for the right people. You've got Evan, who's always looking for somebody out of North Carolina. So all of those people will be here, including Nicole, on site for this. So they will get, and we've got, I believe we have Stony Ridge Farmer is locked in and coming in. And so that's North Carolina also. We're just looking for the right person to match. We always get people that are like, man, I love your videos. I want to come work for you. And I spend more time making videos trying to tell you don't want to work for me than to convince you to come, because it's not just what it looks like on that video. You see that 15 minutes of super cool, this worked, but you don't always see the 16 hours of it not working, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of not working when you're building shit and when you're building businesses both. So is this going to have like some challenges then? Like that you're, I mean, obviously you're going to have like, it's like, you know, build a shelter or whatever, but are you going to have some things that are more like head to head? Like,
absolutely,
can you do it, or who can get it done better or first?
Yes, absolutely. There is. Yes. It's, I keep saying, like, I keep talking about it as though it's like buds, and it's not going to be that. We definitely don't want to scare anybody off. And there's no limitation through strength or knowledge. We really want a vast, you know, variety of people to come in, and you never know who that guy is going to be. And I compare that to, you know, the military training stuff. It's never the football quarterback who passes buds. It's never the peak triathlete guy that makes it. It's always the most unexpected person, and it's more mental than it is physical.
I think there's definitely a lot of it. It would be mental, especially the way you're starting out with your rough camping, and then you're building a structure and all. And you may not have to cut that many people to get down to your final teams, because people do tend to self-select their way out of things pretty quick.
Yeah, You never know, man. We get guys that show up here and they say everything to get the job, and then they do nothing to keep the job. And a lot of guys, like we've had show up, we'll have guys come in that are really, really good, and they're running from something, right? They've freshly broken up from a relationship, come out here, and as soon as they start calling home, and once she starts missing him, he kind of like bails and takes off.
Yeah.
You just never know, man. People are weird. You can't ever really read them.
Yeah. So how long do you picture this process going? Like, is this going to be like 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 2 months?
So it was 6 weeks. I think it's down to 3 weeks. The final is going to be 3 weeks. So the selection is on site for 3 days, but it's really 2 days. That gives them some time to get in and some time to, get out afterwards without having to, okay, you're out, hit the street.
Yeah.
And then I think we have settled on 3 weeks is the final. And this is the first time we're doing this. We want to take the winner and put them onto a piece of property that we're developing, and then run this again and use everybody for the second time to develop that new property.
Gotcha. I think 3 weeks probably makes a lot of sense too, because if somebody has a job or something, it's hard to get away for that length of time and go back and still have a job.
Yes.
So yeah, if you do like 3 months or so, you're not NBC or CBS or whatever, which means it'll be better, but it also means you can't throw these people like $100,000 a piece to be on the show and then they're good for a year or whatever. So I think that's probably a good decision.
I know Joel gets hundreds of people putting in applications when he opens up, and then they kind of go through and they have a number system and nobody communicates with each other. So those guys that get a number one, they basically get put in the pool, and then everybody kind of reviews them, and they bring them out for, I think it's I think he said 3 days. And he's like, that's when the selection is. And then we whittle it down to how many people we're actually going to pull. And I think they whittle it down to 12 interns that actually stay there 6 months. And a lot of those interns become full-time employees.
Yeah.
And they start businesses within that group.
Yeah. So I don't think it's just going to be throw people out and see what they can do. You're probably going to have, like you said, pros involved, people training them. What kind of training do you're going to be doing for these folks?
So training wise, we're gonna start. Obviously, we're cutting down trees and stuff, so that's chainsaw. There'll be some chainsaw training, a good solid day, hands on, using the equipment. Here's the chaps. This is what happens when they get hit. We already ran a chainsaw workshop here. That's kind of a pre test and to actually run this. We already have the people in place. We know what that looks like. We're doing medical training, which is tourniquet application and specific wounds that you would receive while running a chainsaw. That's a separate supplement. Fighting pistol. That's a 2-day class. For how to use and actually run that gun. And that's gun fighting, not gun shooting. That's through TAC Response. They run a class. We've seen that class hundreds of times. My wife and all of my kids have been, I think half the guys on this live feed right here have been through those courses. So it just stuff like that. We're going to get in, we're going to cut some trees down. We're going to take some of that wood, turn it into actually dimensional lumber. We're going to do some fencing and show what the fencing looks like. We're going to plant some trees. We're going to build a structure, solar application of solar and solar installation, water harvesting, all of that. We're going to run all of that. Install mini splits. What kind of system does it take so that we can physically see this? They will see this happen.
And Evan's saying 0 to hero radio operator too.
Yep. Running that too. Yep. They're going to know communications, what they can do, what they can't do, what the limitations of that are. All the sponsors that are involved, we will have their aspect in there.
The chainsaw training is something I think is incredibly important because there's no 4440 to fill out to get a chainsaw. You just go get a chainsaw. Anybody anywhere can order a chainsaw. It comes right to your house. It can jack you up in serious ways, man.
Life altering.
Dude, my father-in-law nicked the back of 2 of his fingers with a chainsaw because he didn't obey the 2 hands on a saw rule. And it was just carryover. It wasn't even under throttle. And I was surprised at how well they healed because it was a horrific looking injury. And it was probably about as minor as you can get. And I watch people use a chainsaw and like, you can tell they don't know anything about like clear 2 avenues of egress, right? Like just because you think the tree's going to go this way doesn't mean that's the way the tree's going to go. And like you could just see somebody wrapped around a bramble laying on the ground with an oak tree over their back. Let alone the other injuries that can occur with this. Like, or you see some idiot up in a tree and they're topping the tree and you're watching a video, you go, I already know it's going to happen. He's going to get smacked right in the face and fall out of the tree. And somebody with you is like, how do you know? And you're like, sweet, bam, there it is.
Or he's tied above where he's cutting. And as soon as that top lets go, it's going to jerk his ass out of the tree. Like, you just don't know what you don't know. And people become very complacent. So if we can instill a little bit of, hey, these are the wounds, these are what these look like, and some of these are very life altering, just keep that in your head, right? Anytime that tourniquet, anytime that chainsaw's out there, there should be a tourniquet with that saw. What does it look like when you hit these, right? How many guys that have cut themselves in the legs have chaps sitting in the truck that aren't put on them?
Yeah. Like, and if you put a chainsaw into your thigh, it's pretty horrific. What there would be like potential prizes is also something I saw in the write-ups on it. So like, what are people going to win? Not getting a ticket home, or some other things?
No, well, I mean, the grand winner is going to get an acre of property on the new property.
Wow. Okay.
So now there's nothing there. The second class will develop that. So, I mean, it'll take all of us going out there and doing something. We want to kind of do what Toolman Tim's doing. You know, he's bought a piece of property and then developing it a little bit at a time. So that's what we're looking at. Where can we put these people? We get a lot of people that come here, but there's the property for sale. A lot of guys can't afford that. So how can we take a piece of property and then put the right people on the property and then have common areas of the property also?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's something that I've wanted to try to do for a long time. I tried to do it straight up with racing financing, and that resulted in a friendly conversation with a gentleman at the FTC that explained that I would go to federal prison if I stayed on that track. So it's good to see you guys trying to do it with another tactic.
Well, I mean, that's kind of where the idea has always been in the back of my head from watching you guys do that, right? The discussions leading up to that. So, and then, you know, Jaeger he's got, I think there's 600 acres out there. They did kind of an intentional community where guys could buy into it, and they did it with a lease. So, you know, we're just kind of combining it and making it work as we go. But I think it's very doable. I mean, you can definitely buy properties around here. And then to have a place where we can put that guy, the winner of the property, to where he's going to rough camp to begin with. And then we'll come up with some kind of structure, whether it be one of these tiny houses or one of the A-frames on a deck or a glamping, you know, just whatever we want to do, whatever he wants to do once we get to that point.
Yeah. You mentioned sponsorships and some partnerships, like these companies are going to help. I would imagine that anybody that wants to contribute would be at least considered, if not welcome.
Well, we'll definitely talk to them. We've got somebody for solar. We have a big, huge fencing gate company that does a lot of kennels and other stuff in. Layman's. I believe we're locked on with Layman's. Off grid. We've got a solar company in there. So yeah, I mean, anybody that's interested, definitely reach out. We might already be locked in with somebody that fits that genre, but we would definitely like to talk to guys.
Yeah, and cash is always appreciated.
Cash is always appreciated. And I mean, you're gonna have spots. We're gonna have advertising. We're gonna have spots. There'll be commercials, and most importantly, you will see us using those products and installing those products all through the episodes.
So when you say episodes, you guys are going to kind of run this like a reality TV show, except it's going to be based on reality then, right?
Real reality. Yeah.
Real reality. Actual reality.
Not scripted. That's why we're not running females right now. This is all men, because we're not looking for the fake bullshit. Not that females can't do it, but that's a whole different set of infrastructure. And, you know, we'll see how this first one goes, and then we will look at bringing females into the second one.
Oh, you're just not woke enough yet, John. We need to fix that. You know, you need to. Where's your your Asian pansexual group. Like,
Yeah.
why don't you have that on there?
Yeah. I mean, we're not asking. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your sexuality is. We need you to be able to come out and fit into the group and do the tasks.
Yeah.
And if you come out and you're looking to change everything and you're a victim, well, then you're not gonna like it. You're gonna weed yourself out very quickly. We won't have to.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have any problems with that.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think you're going to attract all of those folks that would be of that mindset. And like you said, it would be self-correcting rather quickly. So exactly how are you going to, like, you're probably not going to live stream this though. Like, so you're going to be videoing for a certain amount of time a day. There's a certain amount of work that has to be done to get that content package to where it can be put out. Are you just going to run it on YouTube? Is there going to be any cost for people to see it or anything like that?
So the answer is I don't know.
Okay.
We're running multiple cameras, multiple guys behind cameras. We've got drones. We're going to film stuff just how we film stuff now, with more cameras. Like our camera, Brandel, my camera guy, he needs 4 cameras, for instance, because the cameras just simply heat up. It'll be the same stuff you see when we have all the super sweet B-roll and everything. And then we'll have cameras in the cabins where the guys are staying. We'll have all kinds of, there'll be multiple camera angles. There'll be really the bottleneck will be workflow of the footage.
Yeah.
You literally have to set up a library of the footage, and then we will start putting out shorts and make sure we've got all of our sponsors. Really, we got to do the sponsors really well. And then once a week, we will put out an episode, and an episode will be 1 day's worth of footage. But I mean, we're talking 24 hours of footage.
Oh, wow. I mean, that takes a long time because just editing is tedious as it is. But even like, okay, once you've got stuff edited, just rendering a video will take almost as long as the video to render, even with a really good machine. So if I render out an hour-and-a-half video on my PC that's made to do that, it will take about 50 minutes. So that is a production bottleneck. But
yeah, when you see a super sweet commercial that we do for SOE product, and you see a 90-second video, that's 16 hours. That's literally 6 hours of filming to get that 90 seconds. And that's without the editing or any of that. And we're talking about running, when I say 24 hours, we'll probably actually run 18 hours of cameras, but that's 18 hours of cameras times 3 to 6 cameras.
Yeah.
And that's not GoPro. We'll have all the GoPro out there, but when we come flying around with the razors and you see a camera get just swamped in mud, that's an $8,000 camera right there that got, and like, the first few times we did it, I'm like, holy shit, we're going to have to replace this camera. And Brandel's really good about breaking those down and cleaning them. And but every time we've been careful and worried about the equipment, we never get the shot. When we don't worry about the equipment, the shot always shows up.
That's interesting. So this is all going to be held at your property right now, because you mentioned a new property. So is it going to be the first part though on your SOE compound?
The majority of it will be here. We have another property on the other side of the next lot here. We've got access to 30 acres over there. Our friend owns that property. We'll probably do some stuff over there. And then Scully has 300 acres, about 30 minutes from here. So it'll be held probably on 3 locations.
Okay. And like, so, I mean, kind of walk people through, like you said, like first day or whatever is rough camping. Like what is going to be like the initial things that you're going to have people do that you're going to kind of break through and figure out who wants to be there for real?
Well, a lot of it's physical labor. We're going to do a bunch of fencing. That's going to be done initially by hand. And then it's going to be done with equipment, and then it's going to be done with augers. So you'll see all of it. We've got a huge wood pile out here. We're going to run that through and chip, because wood chips are the biggest thing to develop soil, right? And then we're gonna unload and load hay bales. There's a lot of stuff that just has to happen, and a lot of it we're going to leave the property pretty rough, and we're going to develop that area where that wood pile is. We're going to chip that down. We're going to break that out, chip that down, level that, and then sink some piers, build some decks, and then put up structures right there for them to live in. And that's gonna be the initial. The gauntlet is really the selection. We're just looking for people, how they work, right? When the task is done, do they continue to work, or are they sitting there leaning, right? Do they, when you give a guy, hey, we need you to do a minimum of 20 push-ups, the guy that does the 20 push-ups and then stops, that's usually not the dude, right? It's the guy struggling. When the dude's done with his 20 and he goes, helps the guy struggling to make 10, those are the guys, those are the guys that are going to make it long-term.
Yeah, on that, I mean, it seems like a big part of what you're trying to cultivate in this is not just the ability to do things. Like, there's plenty of people that can do things. It's a willingness to do things. And more than that, it seems like you're looking to cultivate leadership.
That's absolutely it, right? I heard the other day, Alex Harmozy was saying, if you have a business and your revenue hasn't grown in 6 months, it's because you're spending your time doing the wrong things. And the difference between a really big company and a small company is just the ability to tolerate mediocrity. Like, you get smaller companies cut out mediocre guys really quickly, and then they don't have a time to develop them. And what it really comes down to is just it's management. That's it exactly, right? How do you have a big company? You have to have management in place that runs teams, and you have a guy on that team that runs a smaller sub team of that. And that's what we're looking for, is guys that want to do this and develop that, because we're looking for guys to work beside us. Like, I need an assistant, and I do not have an assistant. And when I say assistant, I mean a dude that's going to do part of what I do to free me up to do other things. And same thing with Evan, and same thing with Nicole. Nicole gets employees out there, but she needs somebody that can do what Nicole does and then develop them so that it frees her up to do other things. And whether you are within one of our companies or not, or you settle in one of these places and then start your own company. And that's really what I want. I want a dude that's going to come in and work with us, but also have the ambition to start his own thing, whether that be Homestead and video production and monetize through that manner, or produce some product and help sell that. We want to develop guys that want to do this. We want guys that are, like-minded. I'm not looking for employees. I'm looking for people that, want to do what we do, and then do business to business.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the most difficult things in running a business is finding someone like that. Like, my good friend David has a guy named Toby, and he's like, Toby's great, and if I had two of them, I'd be a billionaire.
Yes.
Like, you're lucky if you can find one like that won't just, like, it's great when they go out and do something on their own, but almost everybody I've ever found that was like a candidate to be that level, by the time you get them close to where they can really do what you really want, they go off and do something on their own, which is completely natural. You're looking for an entrepreneur that wants to be an employee, and they're more rare than people that want to be entrepreneurs. And I mean, I don't mean like they say it. You know what I'm talking about. People that really, really want it, like, to find somebody that's that dedicated, but also will work for somebody, that's really hard.
So you've got entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, right? The entrepreneur, you have these guys, most people that say they're entrepreneurs don't actually have a business. They don't produce anything.
Agreed.
So every entrepreneur, every top guy, he needs a number. He's the number one, number two. So he needs some strong number twos and threes also. And a lot of times, guys who have this in them, they will go out and start businesses, but they don't have the ability to scale that business. They really don't want to do what it takes. And if they took a number two position in a strong company, they would actually make a lot more money and have a lot more free time than trying to be an entrepreneur. So just give them the experience, give them the taste of that. And even guys that are like, I don't want to do this, they've still gained some skills, and they have learned some things that they can take back in whatever life they go back to. And in the future, we've planted those seeds. They know what the ability is, and maybe they look at things a little bit differently.
Exactly. If people want to give this a shot, how do they apply?
HomesteadApprentice.com. Imagine that there is a website. There's some really good short form content too on YouTube and Instagram. You can I would say go watch those. There's about 20, 30 short forms. Just watch those. And if it seems interesting to you, we've already put up some videos of some of the guys that have applied, so you kind of know what those are looking like. Check that out. And if you're interested, HomesteadApprentice.com. is where you're going to apply, and all the dates and all the information is all there.
Where do you see this going like long term? Obviously, this is your first attempt at this. It probably won't be perfect. Nothing's ever perfect ever, but it's certainly not perfect on your first go. It seems like though it's not just like a thing you're going to do because it's a thing to do and then you're done with it. You kind of seem like you want to turn this into like an ongoing cultivation of potential leadership.
Absolutely. And it's, I'm terrible about planning things. I don't keep a calendar. I don't plan a schedule. We just do it. And then I worry about the repercussions of it typically afterwards. And it always works out. Even guys are like, I look at allowed versus able, right? We're going to do this thing. And I've got a friend, he's the what if guy. What if? I'm like, they're not going to know. By the time they tell us to stop, it's already happened. And we've already moved on to the next thing. We're going to learn a lot doing it the first time, and we're going to keep it going. Absolutely. I tell people about like a lot of guys that work and they're like, I want to start my own company. I'm like, listen, man, take whatever it is you love to do and start making videos of doing it. And if they're not good, you don't even have to show them to people if you're not comfortable with it. You can take a lot of time to take video classes and take camera classes and do all of this stuff. And the guy that has made 10 videos, his video is nowhere near the guy who just made really crappy videos for 1,000 and learned as he went. Just put that content up there, and you might do whatever it is, right? It might be homesteading that you're doing that builds your audience, but you're going to become a media company. I think everybody needs to be, because that's your marketing. You're going to be a social media company, no matter what it is you're doing. That is where all of your advertising and marketing takes place now. And once you develop that thing that you were filming in the beginning, you might find that you don't have time or you don't want to do that because now you're getting to do all of these other things because of the content. And when you start homesteading, for instance, and you're just really like grunting through it and you got bloody knuckles and you don't have a tractor and you don't have equipment, when you start building content and you get that audience, guys are going to send you that stuff. Companies are just going to drip stuff to you. And when you do those companies right, they're going to send you more stuff. Every month, you're going to get more and more stuff. And people just don't have this. They won't put in the initial time because they're worried about my videos aren't good. Just put that up there. Start documenting your journey. If you do what you truly believe in your heart is the right thing for you and your family, people with those beliefs, they will show up and want to be part of what you're doing. And it's the 12 o'clock on the clock, right? We're right at 12 o'clock and we're moving and we're moving and moving. And then it's 12 o'clock and 1 second. And a mile down the road, that still looks the same, but 5 miles down the road, you don't even see. You might just deviate just ever so slightly and find that thing that you want to do.
You know, there's so much in just doing it and getting started.
Yep.
I've been doing this podcast now almost 16 years. And you listen to me back when I was in my car driving to my office up in Frisco every day. I don't know if you ever listened to episode 1. It's 20 minutes long and it's god awful. It wasn't even a real, like I say, I did it with this little MP3 recorder. It wasn't even a recorder. It was this little camera that did MP3s sitting in my lap without a microphone because it was like, oh, I need to learn how to make a podcast. Yep. Right. It was like, and I'm like, well, I'm going to put it on iTunes. So I'll learn how to put it on iTunes and I'll learn how to do RSS and all this shit. And then it was like, I'm not worried about it because in your first few things you do, nobody's going to fucking listen. There's nobody there. You're learning your trade. And I think that can translate into so many things. Like you didn't go from zero to selling millions of dollars in tactical equipment overnight. And I think the problem is a lot of people look at success today and they don't see the grind that got the person there. And they don't realize, like, I'm sure the first time you picked up a piece of nylon and put it on a sewing machine, you sucked. Right. Yeah. I have this discussion. My granddaughter's hitting this age where everything she can't do makes her cry because she's like 8. Right. And it's like everything you do great because she's badass at gymnastics. Because you sucked at first. Like you have to suck before you become good. And I think like we've gotten to this world because of like this fantasy bullshit, the Instagram world, the heart hands world, where people don't understand you have to suck first.
Yeah.
You have to suck first.
Nobody wants to watch a superhero movie where in the beginning he's a superhero and he's a superhero all the way through. There has to be some terrible shit that happened to that guy for him to overcome or get those powers, right? Nobody wants to watch that video where you're just awesome. The movie only works if there was some terrible shit along the way and some difficulties. And people do. We're getting 60,000 engagements on my live videos every evening now. And people are like, man, this building's so huge. How did you do this? I want to do what you do. And I say, let me tell you, it's 52 years of having nothing to get to this point, right? You don't see the 90 days that I slept in my shop on the floor on some cardboard boxes with a poncho liner. You don't see the 90 days in the beginning when I pulled the truck up to the shop, ran out of gas, and the city ticketed my truck 3 times overnight. And I got some Marines to help me push the truck around back. I didn't have gas in the truck. I ran out of gas the day I pulled up to my shop, and I didn't have water in the building. I lived in the building for 90 days with no water. Like, I ate MREs that I was trading Marines coming out of the field. I was trading them the MREs they were I gained 30 pounds in 90 days eating MREs. I was fat. And like, you don't see that shit, right?
No.
People see the cars and the weird shit all over the shop and the big building. They don't see the 52 years it took to get here. And what I like to tell them, I go, you can have this. What people don't tell you is there's another way. And we're programmed. We send our kids to government school to be raised by people that hate our way of life. And then we wonder why our kids are such a mess, and they come back with none of the beliefs that we instilled in them. And the bottom line is there's another way. You don't have to do this, right? Kids growing up see their parents. They know basically what they make, what their parents made growing up. And we associate that with that kind of life. But by the time 20 years has gone by and we're ready to do the job that we've picked, that money, the job still pays the same money, but everything costs more. So there's another way, right? We program kids that they have to go to school for 12 years and then take another 4 years and then another 2 years if you're going to have a prestigious job. And we give you these 10 jobs that you can pick, right? And the kid typically picks the one that makes the threshold of money that he thinks he can be comfortable with and the job he thinks he will hate the least, right? So that's going to be cop, firefighter, right, whatever. And if you're really prestigious, you're going to go to a lot of extra school and have 150,000 or more in debt. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And by the time you get out of those rotations and all that nonsense, that job you thought you were going to do doesn't even exist in the manner that it existed. And you haven't even tried it. You've literally gone through almost 20 years of schooling to take this job to find out you hate this job. What if we programmed you at 18 or better yet, 12? There is another path. You don't have to do this. Let's identify the thing you like and start teaching a kid how to balance books, profits, loss, right? How to amortize and look at what that's actually going to take to pay those loans off, right? Give your kid some money, give your kid ability and tasks and allow them to fail. Let them stand up, right? We don't let kids get skin knees anymore. There is no touch football, which turns into semi-tackle football. We have no calluses and nobody's been pressure tested.
Dude, we used to play a game called Tackle Loco, and it was basically every man for himself, and one guy has the ball.
Yep.
It was like rugby, but it was the whole team against one guy. You either kicked the ball off or threw it over your shoulder after you got tackled, and one guy would get the ball, and immediately everybody would try to kill him.
We used to play Smear the Queer.
That was the same game.
We would play.
Our name was Tackle Loco.
We would play dodgeball, but you were literally trying to knock somebody's head off.
Oh yeah.
Red Rover, where you'd break through the line.
Yeah.
But you were trying your best. You were trying to get through there, and they were trying to kill you going through there. And
you ever play wall ball?
Yes, they sent us in the 4th grade to a magnet school, and one of the things they taught us that we brought back was wall ball. It's the same with tether ball. You weren't trying to hit that ball. You were trying to get that ball to hit the other guy.
Wall ball we used to play with a racket ball when I was growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. And the winters in Jacksonville are pretty damn cold. And when you're like 30 degrees and you have a racket ball, that's like getting hit with a rock.
Yes.
Right. And that was like what we did for fun. We used to play like street hockey with a taped up skull can.
Yep.
And just beat the crap out of each other. And then everybody got up, shook hands, and went on with their life. Like, we've lost that toughness. And what you were saying about this career path, in case anybody thinks it's just hypothetical what you were saying, I know someone who lived that exact narrative out and got a very high-end, expensive education that they don't use. My best friend from the Army, his ex-wife, her dad was an architect. So she had daddy issues. So she's going to be like daddy and be an architect. So she goes through all the hell to become an architect, including, I think they do 2 years of like an internship before they're allowed to go design a building on their own so that they don't like kill somebody, kind of like doctors have that. And so she goes through architectural school, goes through an internship, owes over $100,000. And this is back mid 90s, right? So that's like owing $200,000 a day at least.
Yep.
Decides I hate being an architect. Had never actually like, you know what? Why don't you go to a place where architects are and ask them if you could work there for a week for free so you could see what architecture is really all about. And do I want to, that would be the minimal amount of due diligence before you sign a contract. You can't even discharge your debt by bankruptcy, right? For $100,000, $200,000 worth of debt. And you've never done the job. And you know what she does now? She designs closets. That's kind of like being an architect, but she basically needed 2 weeks of training on how to use CAD. And she works for like one of these companies that does, you know, like when they come into like rich people's house and design their closet so they know where to put their fucking shoes or whatever, right? But you have $100,000+ degree to design closets. That doesn't make sense.
I've heard you tell the story. Don't you have somebody in your family that does like social media stuff and they're making way more than they were with their real job? But
I call her my niece-in-law, right?
Yeah.
So it's my nephew's wife. She's an Instagram model.
Yep.
And she does really risque looking stuff and all, but no nude, no sex, no stuff like that. They do better than me and I do well. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give away somebody else's, you know, income or whatever, but you know, and before that, her husband, my nephew, he worked for, can't think of the company now. They do like safety equipment and all, deliveries. And he was fairly high level management guy for them. And she was running a business where she did house cleaning and she had girls working for her doing that. They make way more money now working together in that business than they did with those two income streams independently. And they didn't do horrible back then. They just are doing so much better because they decided to try. And that started on a bet. Somebody was talking some shit about some chick that had 100,000 Instagram followers. And my nephew's like, I could get that for my wife. And I think it was something like a $200 bet. You know, could you do it? And it was, they actually realized that they were going to do it. They're like, oh, we gotta do something to monetize it. And they literally built what they do on the same model that I built my membership program on.
Yep.
Like they even use the same guy that built my back end for my membership site for me. And it's a totally different business. And I know tons of people on that model doing the same thing. Brian over at ITS Tactical, he sells gear similar to yours and a lot of other cool stuff and all. But his whole membership program built exactly the same model. Like I think one of the biggest things people need to learn is pattern recognition that I talk about all the time. And then how do I find the pattern that works for what I want to do? Because there's only so many patterns. There's only so many patterns. It's just how do you apply it?
I'm pretty sure. So we met Brian. We knew Brian. And then we were out at SHOT Show and we invited him over to our party. And I'm pretty sure I told Brian about you and told him, I think I introduced you guys. Actually.
You might have. I got the way I met him, I got an email one day. I was probably doing what I was doing for about a year or two. It was pretty early on. And he had just gotten started. And he sent me an email. He says, I'm doing the same thing, but it's different. Do you want to grab a beer?
Yep.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say no to that. Right? Like, I don't know who this person is. It's a weird intro. And it was just something about, I'm like, dude seems legit. I'm like, yeah, we were going to be up at the bar at On the Border tonight anyway. Why don't you come by? And yeah, you may have turned him on to us. You absolutely might have.
Yep.
Yeah. But kind of coming back to it, when we look at this, like I said, leadership seems to be something that's sticking out to me. But at a bigger level than just Homestead Apprentice, isn't this like one of our core issues as a country right now?
Well,
the lack of leadership mentality in people, especially young men.
Yeah. So you hear culture war all the time, right? You hear Tim
Yeah.
Pool and all these guys, culture war, culture war. And what are they doing about it? What are we doing about it? And I think a lot of the problem is, like, if here's a good example, right? We take our elderly and we lock them in a home because we don't want to care for them. So we warehouse them. And then because we feel bad about it, we go and see them once or twice a year and they live in their little community. What if you had enough property, 1 acre, 2 acres, whatever that is? It doesn't have to be under one roof. But what if you had a place where your parents could live, right? Your parents didn't do this. You have to be the lever that changes the direction of your life, right? You have to be the guy that changes the future of your last name. So if you had some property and you built it could be tiny houses, it could be whatever. It doesn't have to be under the same roof. But if you have your parents on the property, they can help raise your children. They might not be able to toil the soil and do all the heavy lifting any longer like they could, but it still gives them purpose. And then when you have kids, they can help with your kids. And then they're helping raise your kids. And when your grandkids come along, your kids you've already built the infrastructure, right? So all it has to do is be occupied at that point. And you have multiple generations. History is his story. Who is telling the story of your family as you want it passed on? If nobody in your family is there to tell that story is lost, or it is changed to benefit the person telling the story. So how do we do that? And how do you have communities, right? What if you had multiple properties and multiple families around there that had that family mindset and that family belief, and you guys produce something that people seeked out? You have two kinds of people in the world. You have producers, and I like to call them bureaucrats, right? You have people that have a skill or a product that people willingly seek out and want to buy from you. And then you have that other side, those government jobs. The only reason you do them is the threat of violence at a gun, right? Would you ever go to the DMV if there wasn't the possibility you have expired tags on your car? Now you get a ticket. If you don't show up to court and you don't show up to court for the ticket, they issue a warrant. And now dudes with guns come and seek you out and hunt you down to drag you to court over a piece of plastic tag and some numbers on your car for a piece of property that you already own and bought and paid sales tax on, but they have to keep getting that revenue. That is a good example of a bureaucrat, a job that they only have that job because they steal the money from people that create work and skill from people that seek that out, right? So which one of those do you want to be? And how do you have less of one of those, right? We no longer mind because you no longer matter. How do we skate and negate those systems, right? How do we do those things that are important to us? There is an underground economy everywhere. Most people are just not aware that that exists.
You know, and it's permeated everything. It definitely, there is a higher prevalence of bureaucrats, if you want to call them that, or administrators in government positions, because government can afford anything because they steal the money. But it's been done through government that this has infiltrated everything, and it's part of why everything's so flippin' expensive. If you look at something like, let's say, doctors and nurses in the healthcare industry relative to the number of administrators in the healthcare industry. Now, that's private sector mostly anyway. The number of administrators since 1970 has exploded relative to the number of doctors and nurses that actually provide care. That's part of like Cornell's iron law bureaucracy, that in any organization, you'll have two types of people dedicated to the mission that go out and do the mission. In the case of doctors, treat sick patients, and then people dedicated to the organization itself, your administrators. And they've so top heavied everything. And then there's places where it crosses over. People don't think of it as government, but it is, like schools. Same thing. 1974, look at the administrators in education. They've become overburdened, and these people don't do anything necessary. And I have people that do these jobs in my audience. They get very mad at me when I say that. And I'm like, okay, if I go back to 1968, there was 5% of you fucking people in existence, and everything worked. So I'm not saying that you don't do anything, like you sit there all day and do nothing, that your entire existence involves converting oxygen to CO2 for trees. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you don't do anything we need you to do. Society would be okay without you doing the thing that you think is necessary. I had a dude one time, John, you'll love this. He comes to me. I was at some thing I was speaking at or something. And he said, I have a government job, but it's necessary. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what do you do? He goes, you know, when you go to the gas station? Yes, I'm familiar with gas stations. And you look on the pump and you see a thing where we test the pump to make sure the pump's not ripping you off. I'm the guy that tests those pumps and certifies those pumps so that people don't get ripped off. And I said, so you do the job of a fixed cavity. He goes, what? A fixed cavity. All I have to do is take a 1 gallon can and put 1 gallon of gas in it and go, oh, look, this pump's honest or it's dishonest. If you didn't exist, how long do you think it would be before auto manufacturers put something in vehicles that told you exactly how much fuel went in the vehicle so you could see it against the pump? And in a world where everybody has a box that can tell everybody else what's going on, how long before that gas station's out of business? And he goes, fuck it, I quit. And he walked away. Right. Yep. And he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at the fact that he thought he had something and it took 30 seconds to figure out how to replace him. And I think there's so much of that. And that's part of the leadership problem, that we have so many places people with no leadership can go earn a good living. Like a lot. I mean, some of these people are paid a lot of money relative to what they do. But I think the other part is like young men are basically told, shut up, don't lead anymore. Like that's the whole message. Like the culture war thing you were talking about with these other people, it gets overused, but I think there is something to that we're just telling men shut up, especially if you're a white man and straight. You have no opinion that's worth having.
Well, I mean, we've just pushed all the alpha males out of the military and law enforcement, right? Who was most apt to uphold the Constitution, uphold the oath that they took? How did they remove them, right? You have to take the thing. If you don't take the thing, you're out. The people that took the thing, those are most likely to be, I was just doing my job. How do you get people to do terrible shit against other people, right? And then you have the whole influx of, they say 22 million. I heard a congressman say that the total number is 22 million has come across the border. They're going to let those people vote. Who are they going to vote for? The same person you would vote for? Or are they going to vote for the person that let them in? And then what? They just swore in a non-citizen to work within the election of one of the states. I don't remember what state that
California.
was.
California did it. They have non-citizen on election watch.
Yeah, you have a lot. It seems to be real. You have a lot of FFL and firearm shop owners saying, hey, the ATF rep just came in, said to give firearms to non-documented aliens when they want to buy them, arm them. They're using them in law enforcement. They're starting to put them in position. Those are your replacements. Like, what do you think is happening? Like we used to make fun of guys about, they're setting up all the FEMA camps, right? All these camps in the desert. You guys can go online and see them things. What do you think? Who do you think they're planning to put in those things? Those are your replacements. You have 30-story hotels in major cities right now, to include Tennessee. You have people selling homes, and the government comes in, or a bureaucrat comes in and goes, hey, we will pay you twice in rent to rent these houses out. They are in your neighborhoods and you don't realize they exist. These hotels, they are not open to you. They are stacked up with people who came across the border illegally. Meanwhile, we have people trying to come in to speak at events from Canada, and they give them a hassle about coming in temporarily to the United States for a weekend.
Yes. I'm sure you know who Curtis Stone is.
No, I don't.
Okay, he's a pretty cool dude. You should probably check him out. He started out basically spin farming, and now he's more of a remote homesteader. So he's in Canada.
Are we talking about Curtis Stone?
Yeah.
Okay, I know Curtis Stone.
Yeah, right. So he was supposed to speak last year at John Bush's thing that I did down in Bastrop. Couldn't get into the country because he told the truth. Yep. Why are you going to the United States? I'm going to speak at an event. Are you being compensated for speaking? Well, they're giving it. Basically, his compensation was they're giving me a hotel room. He didn't think there was any reason not to say that, so he did. They denied him entry into the country. He had to present remotely. So he's going to be in the States for a week. And if he had just lied and said, I'm visiting friends in Texas, come on through. But because he told them that he was going to speak at an event and be compensated, which I don't think getting a free place to stay is that big of a deal, he was denied entry.
Yep.
And so, but, you know, they have this new border bill, John. They want to cap the number of people that illegally come into the country at 5,000 a day.
Yep.
And it's people like you that are standing in the way of that, right?
Yes. Yep. Hey, Jack, I gotta jump off camera for just a second.
All right, no problem.
I'll be right back.
I'll carry the weight while he's gone. I'll just say a little bit more while John's gone about this leadership thing. Some of the problems that we're digging into now may not seem like they're really related to John's program with Homestead Apprentice, but leadership is the only way out of this. We're not going to stop this. We're not going to vote it away. There's too many people, not even just the kind of people John's talking about, but the average person that just works their ass off every day, that has, no ill will against anybody. All they want to do is the one thing most of us want, and that's to be left alone. And so they're busy with their life. My son's a perfect example of this. The guy works his ass off. He's got 2 kids. His wife works her ass off. They're in that employee mindset, but they're not going to do anything to fix the problems. They're lucky that they can at least keep their own life. It's like treading water is where so many people are. And why do you think they created a system that's designed to put you in that position? Most people never develop enough freedom in their life to figure out how to actually carve out the life they want. Instead, they're like a rat in a maze, literally. That's why they call it the rat race, where they like, all I'm trying to do is make sure that I and my kids eat today, and that the rent's paid on the first of the month, and that we don't end up homeless, and that my car payments are made. That's what they're trying to do, is just get by. The only way to create a country full of entrepreneurs that can build these alternative systems is to reinstill leadership. And I think that's a big part of what John's trying to do here, is to incentivize people to lead, because I think it's something that it's very hard for John and I to convey to you how easy it is to do once you make the decision to do it. Once the switch in your head goes and you realize, I really can do whatever the fuck I want, I just have to be creative about how I do it. What I refer to as status jujitsu. There's a place that you cross that, and then you can't go back. It is a lot like, I think there's a lot of analogies come out of the Matrix, but where the guy won't remember the first Matrix movie, the dude wanted them to put him back in and make him forget, and he wanted a good job and to just be left alone. But it's a one-way process. Once you separate, and once you know what freedom is, you have a complete intolerance for the lack thereof. When we first moved back here to Texas from Arkansas, my wife said, I'm thinking maybe I'll go back to work. I'm like, you wouldn't last a week, because you don't have to anymore. So as soon as you go back into an office with all of the problems you used to bitch about, you're going to be there 3 or 4 days, and you're going to go, I don't have to do this. And she goes, yeah, you're probably right. And I think what we want is to make that moment happen for as many people as we can, because every one of those persons that does that, they create opportunities for others. You employ a lot of people. I don't employ a lot of people, but I have a lot of partners. I've created a lot of other entrepreneurs. Every single person that breaks free of that is like a catalyst that multiplies that effect. And I think that's our only fighting back strategy we have at this point. We're not going to fix this with voting. That's not going to happen. It's going to get worse. Like, this is the fourth turning. And the bad times that are being created, if you think you're living in them, you don't understand. You're like at the end of the third. You have the whole fourth to live through. And if you're like John and my age, well, you better get with training the next generation, because by the time we get back into that, strong men create good times, we're going to be old and fucking dead, right? Like, isn't that a big part of this, is to build that leadership in people's minds?
It is. It's lack of execution, right? Most people don't do anything. You have entrepreneurs and pretenders, right? Guys are constantly like, I started my business. I'm like, cool. How much money did you make this week? Well, I didn't make any money. Well, then you don't have a business, right? What's holding you? What's keeping you up? It's like, I got this from you, Jack. When you're not sure what to do, always do something, because most people will do nothing, and you have a 50-50 chance, and it's probably not going to make it worse. At least you tried. So lead, follow, get out of the way. And I'm not looking to build. I'm not looking to, I don't want to show up to compete with guys. I want to show up to complete guys. I want to develop business partners. I'm not looking for employees. People know if they're an employee. If you're an employee and you're like, I've always wanted to move someplace in the middle of nowhere and live a slower life, I have that. However, if you want to come out here and live someplace, an awesome place, and start a business where another business is going to help you and expose you to 20 other businesses, I also have that. I have a place for both of you. Let's figure out which one of those you are.
And I don't mean to be a dick or anything, but if you're an employee to me, you're replaceable. You have a skill set, you do a thing, you get a wage. I don't mean to sound like a dick, but on some level, you are a number, right? And it doesn't mean I don't like you or value you as a person. But if I'm going to have you, run a machine for 8 hours a day, then I can find somebody else who can run that machine for 8 hours a day. Finding someone that can build a complementary business that improves my local ecosystem of businesses, that's hen's teeth, right? That's how rare that seems to be.
That's right. When you get a guy within a company that makes you money, then you give that dude part of that money.
Yes.
When you have a guy that just shows up, my people that show up the latest in the morning are also the earliest to leave, right? The fastest thing they do every day is quit. They don't know when it's time. They can't get to work on time, but they know right when break is. And you have to have, for every 3 of those, that's going to be one. To get 100%, you're going to have 33% people. And you just tolerate that. But when you find that one guy that shows up and always delivers more than is required of him, and you find him doing things that he's not required to do, that's the dude. That's the guy you develop.
When I had my first professional sales gig in telecom, I was there a week before the owner walked into my office and put a key on my desk.
Yep.
And I said, "What's the key for?" He goes, "Because I'm tired of waiting for you to leave."
Yep.
I'm tired of waiting for you to leave so I can leave. Here's the key. Here's an arming code for the door. If you're not that guy, then, and I think a lot of people, especially I hear this because I always try to throw people some level of advice when they're bitching. And what I hear from a lot of young people today is, well, if it was worth it, then maybe I would do it.
Yeah.
And I understand why they think that way. It's not all their fault. They've been conditioned.
They've been
to
programmed
think that way. They have been taught to think that way. That we were mentioning Curtis earlier when he was doing the spin farming thing. He said he would have all these people apply to be interns, and he would hire them. And a week into it, they realized, oh, what we do every day is farm. And they're like, when are we going to get to social justice? He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not what we do here. Yeah. We grow food and we sell it to people in restaurants. That's what we do. But I wanted to make a difference in the world. Well, how about you make a difference for yourself?
Yeah.
But
how about you deliver?
That, I saw this article recently, John. It was from the Gen Zs say that they should not be hired for their skills and what they can do and how hard they work, but for their personalities and how they are the fun people in the workplace.
Well, I mean, a time clock is racist. Math is racist. I mean, look, they're changing the world, right? If I have to hire a guy that can't get the number right, 1 + 1 is 2, and 2 + 2 is 4. And if you can't do that, I don't know how the world's going to run. It's like Atlas Shrugged, man. If you've never read Atlas Shrugged, you can even listen to it. There's 3 separate movies of Atlas Shrugged on YouTube you can watch, but listen to Atlas Shrugged and you will see a huge amount of similarities through there. You're like, oh, that's happening right now. Oh, that's happening right now. Everybody, we had to read Atlas Shrugged in the 4th grade. In the 5th grade, we had to read Animal Farm, right? Kids, they have no idea that these books even exist. And it won't be long until they don't exist anymore. They will be removed from the internet.
I don't remember having to read that in school. We did read 1984 in, I think, 6th grade.
Yep.
And I've read Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead, and they're one of those things that are more prophetic than you would think because they were kind of written in their time because it was already obvious, but it's so much more true now than it was then. I mean, the other thing I'm seeing become a prophecy, and people make jokes about it all the time, but it's not a joke, is the movie Idiocracy.
Yes.
And it literally is like people that you would think of as having good professional careers are the ones not producing children. Right. And so what is the future of a society that doesn't value children enough to have them and doesn't value people enough that once they do have them to teach them leadership? And that future is not bright. And I think that's why movements we're part of, and I would say part of, it's not our movement, it's what we're part of, is the only play that we have because we have to go do our own thing and just accept the fact that if you believe in freedom, then it's also freedom for other people to fuck their lives up. It's freedom for other people to waste their dash. It's freedom for everybody to do whatever they want until they bother you. And all we can do is get as far out of the way as we can, do our own thing, and hopefully they're going to create enough of their own problems. They're going to have time to worry about us.
Remove your kid from the government school system and don't allow them to be programmed right. And then don't feign that you're don't seem so angry. Don't even be angry when that side wants to change their child's sex, right? What are they doing? They're removing their family name from the gene pool.
Yes, they are.
That's okay. Get your kids out of that exposure and take control of your child's life. And a lot of times, I know this is going to blow people's minds, but you need mom and dad, right? One has to choose. It's not 50-50. It's 49-51. I don't care which direction it goes. Raise your kids and let the other group do whatever they're going to do. Whether you like it or not, there are pockets being made. The balkanization is happening. Go to a state. Look how many people left California. There were so many people leaving California in a 3-year period. You could not rent a Ryder truck. People were driving from California to Las Vegas, renting a Ryder truck for a couple of hours, coming back to California, and then leaving to Tennessee, Florida, or Texas. All of the I still have 20 Ryder trucks in this town that came into this town and have never left this town.
You know, and that is one of my major proof points with people when they talk about how great, California is actually wonderful. Well, just go price a U-Haul.
Yeah.
From LA to Dallas versus Dallas to LA. It's about 3x. It's just under 3x. It's like 2.8 times as expensive for a one-way move from California to Texas as Texas to California. And it's exactly what you said. They know that if they want that truck back, they're going to have to pay somebody to bring it back. And that's why it's so cheap to rent it the other direction, because they almost should say, you know what, if you're moving from Dallas to LA, if we have one stuck, we'll give it to you for free just to get the truck back.
Absolutely.
Because they're running out of trucks. They're running out of trucks.
You can make a fortune.
What says more? Like, you and I tell people to move all the time, but we know why people don't do it. It's easy, but it's also hard. It's expensive on some levels, at least initially. And you and I think spending money now, but spending less money long-term, win. Most people, they can't think that way anymore. You give up family, friends, relationships. Some people have, their family's been in this place for 5 generations. I mean, what you were talking about earlier, California used to be a wonderful place for a blue-collar family to live. Not that long ago. Freaking California produced Ronald Reagan as a governor, right? And now it is a freaking hellhole. I'm sorry, it is. And I know it's a beautiful state. I've vacationed there. It's a wonderful place, except for the people that run the damn place, right? And so it's hard to move for people. And yet, look how many have. And I think COVID, in some ways, was a backhanded blessing.
So I don't tell people what to do.
Yeah.
When people ask, I tell them what I did do.
Okay.
What I did do was leave California. And I tell people, I have young men show up on the lives every night. And there's this kid, Big Oso, showed up. And he's like, I think I want to get out of California. I'm like, look, man, I'm telling you, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 19. I go, when I was 19, I said, like everybody else, I need to get out of California. And then when I was 20, I said, I need to get out of California. And I didn't get out of California until I was 30. And had I left California when I was 20, the money would have went so much further. And all the stuff on you, just doing, I don't even have to have a business license in Tennessee to do business, right? Yeah. I don't have to run an articles of incorporation. I don't have to publish the name. I don't have to get a DBA. I don't have to do any of that shit. I just do it, and nobody's going to knock on my door and come find me here in Tennessee, right? I don't have to do any of that. My money doubled.
Or decline the renewal of your permit and shut your business down for 30 days while they investigate it, right?
That's
Shit
right.
Like
none of that happens.
Do you have inventory tax in Tennessee?
No. Well, yes, we have some other taxes. Like we don't have state income tax, but we do have we have real property. We have property tax for the business also, and silly shit. Yes, we do.
But do you pay tax on the gear you've built you haven't sold yet sitting on your shelf?
So yes, you're supposed to.
Okay. All right. Because I know that when I worked for that hardware company out of California, and we would pretty much give shit away in December so that the company didn't have to pay the inventory tax on it. That was insane. It was like, we're better off handing this to customers for future goodwill than holding it over into the next fiscal year and paying tax on it. And I wasn't part of that side of the business, but I knew just based on the way they would cut deals in November, December, I know it must have been really horrible horrible business practice. And like, what I'd say that like this dude that you're talking about is 19. It will be easier to do now than when you're 20, and it will be easier to do when you're 20 than when you're 21. And it will, you see, you know what I'm saying? Like your life becomes intrinsically more complicated as you age, especially 20 to 35. Like that's the time frame. And if you're 34 and you're still thinking one day, motherfucker, you better get on it, because 20 to 35, especially for dudes, that's where you should hit your stride. Somewhere in there would be where you kind of find yourself and you really throw at it and you really take off and you really make something out of yourself. Like if you look at billionaires, how many of them went from not being billionaires when they were 40 to being billionaires when they were 70? Very few, but most of them went from not being billionaires when they were 20 to being billionaires before they were 40. Like that's when you can work longer, harder. You know, you make up for what you haven't learned yet with the youthful exuberance. If you have it, if it hasn't been pounded out of you and destroyed with the nutrition, or I should say the lack of nutrition in today's food. It's why we have 19-year-olds walking around with moobs.
Not only lack of nutrition, but straight poison. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue that your water supply even has toxins in it at this point that are accumulating in your body. And I mean, that's why if you look at the estrogen up in men and testosterone up in women, and you have the demasculation, there's a lot to that, right? So you just have also, like when you're young, you have the ability to move unencumbered. You might have a girlfriend or whatever, but you probably don't have children, right? As soon as you have children, there's so many dudes that are like, I'm just waiting for my kids to graduate high school. So you're waiting 12 years. You're waiting 12 years that you could actually double or triple your ability to execute. And now you're waiting 12 years, right?
And that never happens anyway, because by the time that 12 years goes by, well, now I've got a better job. I'm only 10 years from retirement, whatever. You get a health issue, something happens. And I think what also happens is your will breaks.
It's the same.
The longer you stay in a situation, like if you think of how do we domesticate an animal? We take it when it's very young, we feed it, and we confine it, and we make it dependent upon us. And the more generations we do that, we take an animal. If you think about like what wild cattle are, like if you think of like the wild, like the actual cattle that are really wild, they're murderous. Cape buffaloes kill more people in Africa than lions and hippos combined, right? Yep. But we have cows that are like puppy dogs. I mean, they can step on you and shit, but generally you can just walk up to a cow and pet it and like lead it into the slaughterhouse. And I think that humans, we're not immune to this. When I was a young kid, my dad used to talk about the goal was the domestication of the human male. Full-on domestication. I used to think my dad was a little wacky, and now I'm probably more wacky, according to professionals, than he is with that. I think that's exactly what the goal is, to domesticate the human species the way that they've domesticated livestock, to completely rip anything that's feral or wild out of us.
I think it's even worse. I think it's the castration of the domestic male at this point through the toxins and the poisons and the lack of nutrition and even the chemicals that are induced. I mean, and another example of the cow, right, is the elephant. When you saw all those elephants, they were only held in the ground with a stick and a rope around their front foot, and they would stay there, right? They have taken away any will for that animal to be wild. So it's what do we see
with the horse, and the horse is the bridle and the thing, and it's hooked up to like one of those stupid little plastic chairs?
Yes.
But he won't go anywhere. Or you take pigs and you put them in electro fence, and then you move them somewhere and you need to hold them for a bit. You throw string up and they see the string and they're like, no, fuck that. I'm not touching that. Right. Like humans, we are not immune to Pavlov's dog's theorem, right? We are just as we might be more conditionable. If you think about it, the most conditionable animals are the most intelligent, right? Look what they can get a dolphin to do in captivity, right? Mm-hmm. We'll do that with a snake, right? The snake has a very primitive brain. It might learn in time, this giant monkey thing isn't going to hurt me, so I'm not going to bite it. But it will always be a snake. You can't make it not. You can't train your snake. Like you can't. Well, I can't hear anyway. But you can't like tap your desk and make the snake come over. You can't like when you see somebody doing snake charming shit. You know what that is, John. You've done enough with reptiles. That's just the animal responding to movement. That animal's not trained.
Yeah,
So
every
the
now and
more
then.
primitive the mind, the more difficult it is to condition. So humans are the most, I know people are going to think I'm nuts for this, but they're the most subjected and most capable of being domesticated and being conditioned to behave in an irrational way. And if you don't believe it, go look what people did for 2 years
So
during the whole.
why is that, right? Where is the change between hundreds of years ago when men were trying to keep men captive, and then versus now where they willingly do that, right? They used to have children and family, or you would take them from the continent and bring them into another continent. And every now and then they did revolt, right? The snake thing, if you deal with venomous animals long enough, you will be envenomated. But right now, how many people willingly went and took the thing and turned other people in? It's that mob mentality, right? They have done a very good job of further separating people. It used to be blacks versus whites versus blacks. And then it was, gays and straights, blue collar, white collar, right? We weren't supposed to like each other if we worked with our hands versus, a management type position. But nowadays, the bump stock is a good example, right? The silly bump stock. Who knew you had a bump stock that was going to turn you in when they said, hey, this piece of plastic is now illegal? Who was going to report you? A dude who you trusted enough that you both went out shooting together and had the bump stock. The guy who's especially the gun culture community stuff, they have done such a good job at fractioning that even more. The guy that's going to tell on you or report you online for some silly shit, he looks like you. He drives a truck like you. He has the same stickers on his truck like you. He probably loves his family equally to you. And they just get you to live in this constant state of chaos, right? Everybody wants to talk about, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I have a lot of fun doing the conspiracy theory. It's really conspiracy fact at this point. I believe all of them, every fucking one of them. Everything Alex Jones said. Find me 2 things he said. You might find 1 or 2. Find me 3 things Alex Jones said that didn't actually happen. But what can you do about it, right? Do we agree stuff's getting more difficult? Do we agree that my employee just told me this morning that she went to buy chicken strips and it was $10 for a bag of chicken strips in the most impoverished county of Tennessee? Yeah, that happened, right? So
Yeah.
what can we do? We can all agree that if things are getting worse, they are. Would it be better off and more beneficial to you if you had a means to make money on your own and you had the ability, right? As an employee, you work 40 hours a week and this is what you're getting paid. And no matter what you do, you can't make more money on your time, right? So how do you make more money? If you had more money, would you be better off? If I gave you $1 million tomorrow, boom, you wake up and there's $1 million on your coffee table. Would you do the same shit you're doing right now tomorrow? And if you're honest at all, the answer is no, you would not. So how do we set that course? If this, then that, what can we control? The temperature of the water in your pool. I got that from Jack. I say it all the time. I like to say war, within arm's reach, right? Within arm's reach. Can I touch it? Can I feel it? Can I smell it? Can I taste it? And if the answer is no, then I don't care. What's going on? What do you think of Ukraine? I don't give 2 shits about Ukraine. I think the same thing you do. It's theft. But I'm not going to spend all day making videos and talking about Ukraine. I don't have a Russian problem. I have friends that are Russian. I don't know anybody that's Ukraine. I don't fucking care. If you had money, could you get a better place? Could you have cleaner food? Could you take money and invest it into products that you can resell and 10x your money on? And the answer is yes. And there's always some dude shows up like, money's not everything. Oh yeah? Then why do you show up at a place every morning that you don't want to be for such a small, finite amount of money?
You know what I know about the people that say that? They never have any.
Never.
Nobody that has money ever says it's nothing. It's not important.
Yeah,
it's not
every
the
time
only thing, but it's important.
I don't have to know Bitcoin went down in value because there's 2 assholes every time it happens. They're like, aren't you glad? I'll bet you wish you didn't have that Bitcoin. I'm like, I bet you didn't. I bet you don't have any money. Like, where's your investments? Let's look at one of my accounts that has Bitcoin, and you can send me a screenshot of whatever bank account you want to send me, because I know your ass only has one, right? It doesn't. It's always when you have a person taking interest in something he thinks is negative to you, remove access of yourself, right? And I can't leave because of my family. I moved to Tennessee 20 years ago. People from California, when are you going to come visit? When are you going to visit? Never. I'm never coming to see you. My mother, when are you coming back to see me? Never, Mom. I'll fly you here. I'll have you driven here. I will buy you a house. I will build you a house. I will get you an apartment. Whatever, however you want to live, I will bring you here. I never saw my mother.
I'll tell you,
I
John,
never
we're in the
saw
same
her.
place. And the few people in my family I still have communications with, whenever they talk that way, I'm like, tell me when you want to come and I'll get you a plane ticket.
Yeah. I'm a terrible friend.
I'm not. Like, there's nothing for me there. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take myself out of my business for a week or 2 or 3, and I'm going to impair my ability to earn money. You know what? When I do that, I'm going to be like hanging out in the forest somewhere, or fishing on the beach in Florida, or down in Costa Rica fishing for marlin or something. Like, if I'm going to take myself out of my business, my operation, my homestead, I'm going to pay somebody to live here while I'm gone, so that all the work I put into it doesn't go to shit in the middle of the summer when I'm not here to look after it. If I'm doing that, it's not to go back to where I grew up in an impoverished community where no one there has any intention of changing their life ever, and I'm going to get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
And when I said that to one person in particular, they said, well, then I guess you don't care about me. I'm like, I do care about you. That's why I want you to be somewhere where you'll get something out of it, right? Because you either get drawn down or built up by the people around you. Yeah. And I know that place offers me, and I hate saying it because I do love some of the people there, but it offers me nothing. It offers me nothing that builds, like, one of my things to be in my orbit, there has to be something about you that I go, I wish I was more like this person in at least one way. And it's not elitism. It's not like narcissism or anything, like you're not good enough. It's like, I'm not that great. So there should be something that you can offer to draw me. And hopefully I offer you something back. Yeah. And there are people and there are places where the equation on that is a zero-sum game. Like, I'm not going to gain anything. And I think it takes people a while to get comfortable saying that out loud and actually meaning it, let alone doing it. But it is, to me, one of my, like, there's probably 5 things that are the keys to how I've been able to do what I've done in my life. One, you said earlier, if I'm at a point I got to do something, I'm going to do something. Because there's probably only 2 things I can do anyway. And if I do the wrong one, I'll just do it carefully. And as soon as I figured I fucked up, now I learned something, now I can go do the other way, right? But the other one is to separate yourself from people that are drawdowns. If a person doesn't bring you up, you know, they might qualify to be an employee, but not a partner, I guess is one way to look at it. And certainly not a friend. Like, we're not going to, you talk about this all the time, we're not going to hang out unless there's something to do when we're hanging out other than listen to you bitch.
That's right. I'm a terrible friend. Like, if you want to be a friend with me, you have to come where I am, because every day I'm out of here, it takes me and my wife physically 3 days to catch up. If I'm out of here, revenue is 3 times less. If I'm out of here, work is only done at 1/3. Even with the great people that I have, if you are not here, it does not happen. And you never make that money back. If I step out of the business for 3 days, the money never comes back. I will start ramping the money back up, but that's 3 days of revenue that is down. It's always, right? And everybody is contagious, right? Everybody you come in contact with is contagious. So you better make sure you want to catch what what he's putting out there, right? You see these people that you haven't seen in 6 months and you meet for lunch or whatever. What do? They tell you about all the miserable shit and about people in their life that you don't know. I don't give a shit about what's going on in your life with people I don't know. Just tell me some good shit. You have to add value. I got a buddy wants to meet this guy. And I'm like, you've been here several times when you met him. He was here. You know him. But if you want to be in this guy's circle, just like mine or Jack's, you have to bring value. You have to make something easier or do something. Like, here's a simple thing. If you're an employee and you want to raise, find some shit your boss is doing and do that so he doesn't have to do it. Don't ask for shit. Don't even tell him you did it. I promise you, he will know.
He'll know.
And when you accumulate that, it will add up. And before you know it, you are going to be making more money, or you're going to have another task. And
I've hired people that walked into an office and said, "Are you hiring?" And I said, "No," but they didn't leave.
Yes. I fired a girl once, almost a knockdown, like drag out fight, like fired. Everybody's like, what the hell's going on? And she walked in here the next day after I fired her, sat on a sewing machine and ran that sewing machine, didn't say a word to me for 3 weeks, and worked here another 6 months. I fired her. She just didn't stop coming to work.
It makes me think of an episode of Friends, but I digress. Let's take some a few questions here.
Absolutely.
Will Chuck be doing a medical challenge?
I don't know about a medical challenge. Chuck is overseeing all of the medical. Yes, he will be doing tourniquet. Yes, there will probably be some sort of challenge also. Yes.
Drag your buddy out of the field.
That's home. That's Homestead Medical, Chuck.
Okay. Just thanks to Chicken Hawk Farmstead, who threw us $10 in super chat. He says for gas money, because YouTube's a bunch of lying pricks. I no longer run ads during our live stream. So thank you for that. If one person in a stream does that, I'm far ahead of their bullshit ads. 8-Bear Adventures. How many people have applied so far, John? Do you know?
Well, that doesn't matter, 8-Bear Adventure, because I haven't seen your application yet. I know who that is, and he probably knows better than I do how many people have applied.
Okay. It's a short form, folks. Go fill it out if you want to do it. I mean, I told John when he started, I hope it works out really great, because when we did the farm up in West Virginia for Perma Ethos, we didn't even do like a challenge. Like, you want to show up and do something, you can. Here's 110 acres. Figure out something you can do to make money and get going. And well, how much are you going to give us? How much money do we get to start out with? I don't know. How much money do you have? Here's a place to sleep. Here's enough food to not starve to death once a day, and otherwise you got to provide your own food. I got to provide my own food. There's a question coming you're going to love, I bet. Go do it. Go do it. I mean, when I was 18, 19 years old, like you were talking about earlier, some of these things that people have put up opportunities to do, you would have to blow me out of there with dynamite. I would have never left. Right? I can hunt. I can fish. There's a creek there. There's a field, and I can put in an orchard. I just have to get the trees. Yeah. Okay. It would have been my only thing would have, is this a trick? Is this a trick? Right? It's because if it's not, I'm your guy.
Let me tell you also.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you also that 8-Bear Adventures right there. That's a young man who is, I think he's 15 now. I would trust my life to that kid more than most adults I know. He's trained up, he's schooled up, he's whatever he does in life is going to be enormous. Like, whoever in the future, his father is going to be very proud of what that boy does with his last name. Like, those are the kids. Like, we get these homeschool kids around, and he's not homeschooled, but we get homeschool kids and young men like himself around, and you talk to them and you're like, man, this kid is so smart. If I had adults with that knowledge and that passion and that desire, imagine we could take over the world.
Yeah. Where are Builder of Castles says, where are you on large tropical greenhouse? I don't know if that's a project you have in mind or something. I'm working on designs for someone else. How much earth moving can be done on your site?
I have 10 acres. We can move some earth. Unfortunately, the back area, the biggest part of the property, I have 6 septic systems out there.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind maybe sacrificing one of those septic systems, perhaps. We also have the upper hill. We can dig. Even if we put it in and we decide 6 months later we don't want that, we can dig. We have access to excavators. We have a skid steer on site here. Very interested in what you have to say. Are we talking 4 foot in the ground? Love to see it, man.
Okay. Well, you know how to get in touch with them. And if you don't, you got to figure it out. How do you plan to feed all the people that participate in Homestead Apprentice?
Well, I like to point out to Nicole when we do Self-Reliance Festival, this is called Self-Reliance. Bring your own food. No, we have a couple of avenues, and we'll be doing a lot also where we all sit down and actually have a meal together. I think it's important for everybody to, I think that's important. We feed all of my employees here every day. We have somebody that cooks lunch, and we all stand at a couple tables together and we all eat lunch, and it's only 15 minutes that we stand and talk. But I think it's important, right? We used to every Sunday take a potluck and go to grandma's house. All of the cousins and the aunts and uncles were always at grandma's house every Sunday, and then every Thanksgiving and Christmas. So growing up, that was there. And I think that is important, that the family comes together and actually has dinner together.
Yeah, I miss those days. That was something, my grandmother's was the same way. Sunday, you didn't miss Sunday dinner. You just didn't do it. That was someplace you're expected to be. And, if I did it for my family right now, I know right now what would happen. They wouldn't show up because everybody's in that treadmill mode, and
well, my family has changed, right? The people who have my last name are not necessarily, I have family that doesn't have my last name. And it sounds like David Hosfeld is volunteering. So definitely get with us and let us know what you propose, David.
And I'll just say on the feeding people things, like people ask me, well, why is your workshop $600? Because you want me to feed you for 3 days?
Yep.
I mean, my biggest expenses are porta johns and food.
Yep.
That paying my presenters and all is a pittance compared to those two things. We spent just one meal, our Friday night meal. We spent like $2,000 on just the dinner.
Yeah.
For everybody. So
when we would do small parties, 500 people we'd have show up. We would bring in Shane from Smoke It All, for instance, won Food Truck Wars 2 years in a row. I pay him $3,500 to show up with the truck. Anything he makes past that, he keeps. Like, I don't take any profit off of the food. I never have. And then if I want to do the break even, we're about $5,000 just to have those guys come in and feed everybody one, whatever the portion thing that he's making is. But during Homestead Apprentice, some of it is going to be that you walk up this hill and you process these rabbits and you take them back there. And here is a sack of wheat, and here is the wheat grinder, and you're going to grind this. And here is the wood burning ovens, and you're going to actually cook your meals. And if it sucks, well, you're going to learn rather quickly. And you're also feeding us, so it better not suck. And there will be oversight and guidance.
Cool. Courtney 89 Country says location. Be nice. They may have just showed up and not know who you are.
All right, so you can find all the information at homesteadapprentice.com. When I put out help wanted and hiring videos, I never put the address. If you cannot find me, if you don't have the wherewithal to click, you're on the internet. The answer to everything is here. Yeah. If you can't take my name and find me, you're definitely not going to work arm in arm and elbow to elbow with me.
Well, especially the name of your company.
Yes.
Right. If you put the name of your company in, there's only one. I guarantee you'll find it, and there's an address right on the website. And if you can't navigate there, then you probably don't get a job.
Well, we've been doing this since before the internet. Like, we used to actually have to communicate people, talk on the phone. I mean, I have every single day of the internet in existence, and I have history out there. Like, I have 5,000 videos on the YouTube channel here.
Yeah. If they can't find you, and people get pissed at me, I'll do the same thing. Like, they'll DM me on Twitter or something. And like, that's just a bad way to stay in touch with me, because I just don't constantly check that, but I'm always checking my email. And I'll say something like, look, if you really want to know this shit for the show or whatever, email me. What's your email address?
Yep.
No answer.
Yep.
No, you can't figure out Jack, the survivalpodcast.com. If you can't put those two together, I don't expect your question to be very intelligent.
Guys are every night. Guys are like, how much is this thing? I go, the real answer is I don't know how much it is. I designed it. I tweaked it 12 times, made the patterns. I don't have a clue what it is, but I do have this thing called a website, and that's where you have to go to order it and pay for it. And if you're not willing to do that, like, and the beauty of it is with the footprint that we have in the industry and we've created, I guess I used to be a smart ass to be like the industry I created, but we really did create much of this industry that exists today. And with that footprint, while a dude's asking the question, 20 other people are already buying it.
Yeah. And just a real quick thank you there to Legendary Farm and Homestead for a $5 super chat. Thank you.
I love the name. It's going to spur people to look, because legendary, right? And then even if it's not legendary, you can weave the story of how we're turning this into a legendary homestead. I love the title of your YouTube channel there, bud.
And again, I don't know which channel he threw that to us on, whether it was for me or John, but either way, thank you. And yes, Legendary Farm and Homestead. You guys should look that up. Anyway, John, I appreciate you being with us today. Remind people one more time how they can apply to be part of this challenge, and give them like the 60 seconds on what they're going to get out of it.
Okay, homesteadapprentice.com. We've got great footprint on social media. Check us out. See if you want to attend. If you think, man, I would be great in this, but I'm not a participant, but I'm a great expert guy, hit us up, man. We'd love to talk to you. If you want to come out, you can only make it out part-time and you want to help on the back end, hit us up. We can definitely discuss that. SOE Tactical Gear is my website. This is my YouTube channel. Also SOE Tactical Gear. Your URL should say what you do and do what you say. SOE Tactical Gear. That is my footprint on all social media. I do a live video every night at 9 o'clock. We can discuss little politics. We can discuss current events, homesteading, business design, lifestyle design, anything you want to talk to. I run those literally every single day at 9 o'clock every day of the year. And we run for 2 hours. And those conversations are driven by the comments that you guys put through there. So we can talk about anything. I'll be there tonight again, 9 o'clock.
Great, John. Thank you. I want to real quick close up here. Again, if you're on John's stream, this is an episode of my podcast, so just roll with us. One of the things I do is I do reviews on my website. It's one of the ways I monetize my content. And you can find everything that I recommend at tspaz.com, T-S-P-A-Z, tspaz.com. Today's item of the day are these little Century 24-hour mechanical timers. They're about $8 a piece. And they're one of the simplest, easiest little pieces of automation you can use. And right now I brought them around because what's everybody doing? Starting seeds. You know what I do with them for starting seeds? I automate my lights. That way I don't forget to turn my lights on and off. I automate my irrigation, watering from the bottom with a simple flood and drain with a pump that kicks on for 15 minutes twice a day. And I automate my heating pads. Like I have stuff in these little mini greenhouses to start my seeds so they're warm enough. I don't want those heating pads on all day long while the lights are generating heat. So the heating pads come on when the lights go off. I don't use any kind of complicated shit. I use these timers and they come in 2 packs. You save like $1.50. Over buying them individually. Every time I need at least one, I buy 2. I have them on the shelf. If they break, I don't care. They're $8. They're like an employee that doesn't sleep. They just do what you need them to do. So check them out. And remember, you can always support us no matter what you buy if you start your online shopping at tspaz.com. Another thing I got, we're talking about homestead skills today. My composting course, having nothing but great feedback so far. That's at homefoodsystems.com. That's a new business unit that we're building out. We're building a whole education platform for people. If you're on the video right now and you look, those 2 plants, one is in badass potting soil. I mean, the best you can buy. The other's in my compost. I shouldn't have to say shit. We teach you how to do this for $40. So do consider that. John, again, real quick, thank you for being with us today, man. I know pulling you out of your element for almost 2 hours, big deal. So thanks for taking the time with us.
Always, man. Always.
And we had a question about your platform as far as your lives. That's YouTube, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I have John's official website, his YouTube, everything in the show notes today, plus all the stuff for Homestead Apprentice, both for SOE and Homestead Apprentice. That'll be in the audio right down there in the video. If you look down in the notes, there's a link over there. If you click it right now, we're not done yet. But if it's not live with about half an hour after we end, which is going to be right now, the audio end will go up and you can get all of the additional information. But if you can't get to homesteadapprentice.com, you're probably not going to make the cut. Anyway, with that, thanks for being with us today, guys. Have a great day.
Awesome.